Good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome. My name is Elise, and I work for TCC Canada. So we are an A to Z business solution provider. And during the shutdown, what we've started doing is bringing on experts in different types of fields for our community. We know that times are a little bit trickier for people. Business is very much changing and shifting, sometimes on an hourly basis, but typically day to day. And so we want to make sure that we're providing as much value for our community and making sure that we also stay connected. And so we found that these webinars have been a great way to help local businesses as well as helping our community learn and adapt as we go through changes. So we've got Lisa on today for a very, very fitting conversation about stress. And I won't talk too much longer, so I'll pass it right on off to her.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And so happy to be here and be able to share. I love educating and I love sharing. And so today I want to talk about stress, right? I want to talk about, because we're all under extra stress nowadays, especially as business owners and trying to adapt to what we need to do in the current marketplace. And so I am the founder of LPK Health and Performance and have been a mineral expert for years now, and have actually founded a supplement company as well called Vicon Customs and Vicon Performance. So I'll touch a little bit about those on the end, but I want to talk about stress. So 4 types of stress, like categories that we want to discuss. And all of these categories, we have things that are in our control, we have things that are out of our control. And so we really have to hone in and focus on those things that we can control. Because if we think about it all, it can be extremely overwhelming and it can cause a lot of anxiety and lack of productivity. So I want to touch on that too. So when we think about stress and those 4 categories, we're talking physical, mental, emotional, and behavioral. And so when the body is under stress, chronic stress, one of the things that happens is, we automatically respond to that stress as if a bear is chasing us. What we're seeing nowadays is when people are under chronic stress, they're coming up from their body being in homeostasis, they're experiencing that stressor and they're going up what I call the front side of that roller coaster. And what's supposed to happen is after the bear stops chasing us, we come back down to a homeostasis level. And what's happening now is we're getting up the side of that roller coaster, the stress never stops, and eventually what's happening is we're coming down the other side, and that's a dangerous slope to be on. And we really need to think about the things that we can control in our health so that we're functioning optimally and can adapt and be stress resilient, because that's super important. And so when the body's under stress, we can be experiencing frequent infections, headache, fatigue, muscle twitches. And muscle twitches is a really interesting one. So let me give you a teeny bit of background on minerals. Minerals are such an important factor when you're talking about health. And so muscle twitches are caused normally, especially when we're under stress, from the lack of available magnesium and also potassium. And so when we're talking minerals and we're talking about stress, the stress response is strong and it requires magnesium because magnesium is our #1 anti-stress mineral. And so when we're under any type of acute or chronic stress, you're going to burn up to 5 times more magnesium than you would on a normal daily basis. And so if you're under extra stress, then we always suggest putting a magnesium supplement into your daily routine to make sure, especially if you're having muscle twitches, that is the first key to knowing that you are lacking in magnesium. Plenty of food sources out there as well. So if you Google magnesium, you'll get a whole list of foods. We always start nutrition first. Now, when we talk about mental, then it could be impaired judgment, maybe negativity, hasty decisions where you're kind of indecisive, or you make a decision really quick and then you think back and that, I should have sat back and waited a little bit longer to address that. Could be brain fog as well. That's super common. And nightmares. That's another one. So that's, when our body is under that extra stress, those are the things that could be happening to us mentally. And the other one that we talk about with regards to that is positive self-talk, because negative self-talk can be a really big factor when we're under stress. And it's such a hot, like, I don't want to say a hot topic because that's not the right words, but it's just a topic where you really, really need to be aware of how you are speaking to yourself. And I mean, we all experience negative thoughts, but the fact is we need to be aware of them, thank them for coming, and then replace it with something positive. And so I do have a little workshop with regards to defining those stressors that you can control, and also a PDF with regards to how to change some negative self-talk into positive self-talk. And it takes time and it takes practice to do that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Emotional. Loss of confidence, right? Sometimes we're so stressed and overwhelmed, we don't have the confidence we normally do, so we're not operating at a really high level as we normally would. Probably depression in some cases, irritability, apprehension. You could be a little bit more fussy, so there could be some emotional things going on here as well when we're under that chronic stress. And then when we talk about behavior, it could be loss of appetite. We could be drinking more alcohol, smoking more if we're a smoker, reaching for those things, being a little bit, having some restlessness. And so, maybe just picking up some habits that we wouldn't normally engage in quite so often, but we're doing it more often. And so those are some of the things that we really kind of just have to take a step back and say, okay, here's what's happening in my life. And that's where the little workshop comes in. So basically what we're talking about in that, how to make stress into an opportunity, both growth for personal and professional, because it's important. Any stressful situation, whether it's something personal in our lives that's an external stressor, or whether it's something in our business that's an external stressor, there's always opportunity for us to learn something, either about how to adapt to change or about ourselves personally and how we're dealing with things. And a lot of times what has to happen for that to kind of be, for you to be able to move forward, is you need to identify the stressors, why they're happening, and then figure out which ones you can actually control. Because trying to control something you can't is a waste of your energy. So we need to focus the energy that you do have in those stressful periods on the right things that you can actually change. And so that's where that workshop will really help walk you through and identify those things so that you can figure out how to prioritize. Now, for me, I do run multiple businesses, and there are times, especially right now during the pandemic, that it does get a bit overwhelming. And what I like to do is I like to get outside. It is summer, so it's a little bit different in the wintertime in Ottawa. I wouldn't be saying I'd be outside in my bare feet, but in the summertime, totally can do that. So I like to get outside. I like to take my shoes off, walk in the grass, and just take some time to breathe. And so, for those of you who practice meditation, it is such a powerful tool. And so what I hear from a lot of clients is that they don't have time. They don't have time I don't have 30 minutes or an hour to meditate. And when we're not making time, it means that we may not really want to do it, or maybe we're fearful of it. Could be many reasons. What I do for myself, and it's very manageable, and I always suggest it to my clients, is I like to just sit with my eyes closed, or get outside in the grass and close my eyes, just, feel the grass under your feet, ground your energy to the earth. And I like to take about 10 to 40, if I have time, deep breaths with my eyes closed. And it's amazing when you are dealing with, maybe there's a multitude of things going on. Maybe today, the day is not going your way. There's 10 different things you have to deal with, and you don't even know where to start. And you just want to shut it all down because you're so stressed about it all. And so at that point, that's when I go, okay, I just need to take a step back, close my eyes, take some deep breaths. And if you do that, try it today. I want to hear how this goes. I wanted you to drop your comments. I know this is going live on Facebook, but I know you'll be able to watch it later. I'd love to hear about it. And just see how you feel after even those 10 deep breaths with your eyes closed, where you can just digress and then go back to those situations. And I bet you'll be able to see them a little bit more clearly about what needs to be done first, and you'll end up being more productive in the long run. And so try that. I want to hear about it. I do it all the time, and it really, really helps me to just regain that focus that I might be missing when I'm in the moment. Because a lot of times when we're in the moment and we're dealing with it all, we don't really have the capabilities to find the right answer until we kind of step back for a few minutes and ground ourselves to be able to see, you know, what exactly needs to be done first. Let's do that, and we'll work through one thing at a time. Okay. And so that's a really important thing that you can do and you can practice daily or multiple times a day, depending on how things are going, that can help you refocus. The other one is when we're in these situations, and again, we're talking about stressors that we can control, we need to have those supportive relationships. So whether it's with a spouse supporting you, whether it's colleagues, you know, if you're the boss, then maybe it's your support staff. We need to have those supportive relationships in order to make sure that we're all on the same page in a business environment, right? In a professional environment. And so to make sure that they're there to support you, you're there to support them, and that makes everything run a little bit better, right? Many hands make less work, and it can take a lot of stress off of you and of them sometimes, because maybe there's things that you can do better or they can do better, and it just works a little bit more succinctly than trying to do it all alone. Okay, so keep that in mind too. And then some of the things I want to talk about physical health first, because physical health, there are so many things that we can do to support ourselves, support our productivity and our performance when we're under stress. And so the first one is our nutrition. Nutrition is hands down number one. And when we are under stress, what are we reaching for? We're reaching for caffeine, which upsets our circadian rhythm, right? So that rhythm of our bodies over a 24-hour period where it's regulating our hormones and allowing us to sleep at night. So that's being upset, especially for drinking caffeine after 3 p.m. We're reaching for sugar because we want more energy, and sugar gives us that immediate response, but then we end up crashing because, of course, as soon as we eat sugar without any protein or fat, our body releases insulin, which dives down our energy levels, right? Because now the insulin's combating that sugar high. And so that is a bit of a crazy roller coaster to be on. And then if we're combining that with, right, that excessive alcohol intake possibly, now we're talking about digestion. And because, you know, fermentation, yeast is very opportunistic. So normally there's bacteria or pathogens in the gut that we may be dealing with as well that could be caused from what we're eating and what we're drinking. And so we really want to make sure that we're getting lots of vegetables, lots of fruit. I would say whole foods. If you're eating 80% is my rule, right? 80-20, if we make healthy decisions 80% of the time, you are way ahead of the curve and doing amazing. And so cutting out the sugar, reducing the alcohol, maybe not smoking so much if you're still a smoker. The other one is processed foods. So trans fats, excess sodium. We will talk a little bit about sodium and how the adrenal response happens, but the sodium that's in processed foods, unfortunately, doesn't have all of those great minerals that can be found in sea salt. And so when we're talking about that and we're talking about our nutrition, I always talk about whole foods. If you're eating whole foods 80% of the time, which whole foods are, my definition, very simple, is they have one ingredient. A banana is a banana, you know, an apple's an apple, lettuce is lettuce. There's nothing else in that. And then you're getting vitamins, minerals, you're getting phytonutrients, and you're supporting your body to the best of your ability. Again, 80% of the time. You know, we all have indulgences, and that's okay. But if you make healthy choices 80% of the time, then again, like I said, you're way ahead of the curve, and it's definitely going to help with your body and how it's functioning in stressful situations. The other one we want to talk about is exercise. Now, exercise can be a tricky one because I feel like everybody, when they think about exercise, they think about high intensity training and, you know, kind of going to the gym and going all out. And that's not necessarily for everyone. Okay. And even as an athlete myself, you know, training has to be modified. It has to be a peak and a valley, a peak and a valley. You can't be peaked all the time. Your body just can't operate at that level all the time. And so exercise can be as simple as walking your dog every day. Exercise should be something that makes you happy, should be something that your body can handle. I don't want you to get up the next day and you can't walk because you exercised and did a leg day and you can't get out of bed in the morning. I want you to be able to get up and want to do your daily movement practice. Could be stretching, it could be yoga, it could be a little bit of high intensity training mixed with some other training or some yoga or some stretching, whatever that case might be. there's tons of options. If you're a runner or a biker or cyclist in the summertime is wonderful. There's lots of things that you can do. But remember, when your body is under stress, and I'm talking chronic heavy stress, a movement practice that is more nurturing for your body, like yoga or walking or, you know, maybe light cycling, is actually better than trying to do those high intensity workouts. Because if your body is under that chronic stress, it's already being broken down. And exercise, obviously, we break down, we build back up. And normally we build back up higher than where we started. But if your body's under that chronic stress, you may not get up to that higher level and your body ends up in a catabolic state. So be very careful with exercise and make sure that you feel good doing it and listen to your body. It's one of the things that a lot of weekend warriors, people who train, they don't listen to their bodies and then they end up making themselves worse. So be very, very mindful of exercise and make sure you're picking a practice that you really enjoy and that you can fit into your daily schedule and that your body can recover from. That's what has to happen, because again, you make more gains at home than you do in the gym or doing your daily movement practice, okay? So next one for recovery, as we talk about exercise recovery, is sleep. We have to be able to sleep. And so again, reaching for the sugar, the caffeine, all those things that will elevate us and then let us fall, not great for sleep. And so one of the things about sleep that really interests me, and I always talk about this, is your sleeping environment. So first off, let's say we've got our whole foods nutrition in place. We're making 80% healthy choices, and we've got our daily movement practice that we really enjoy. And now we're going to go to bed. And so shutting down the blue light about an hour before bed is so important, because blue light actually mimics sunshine. So that's why if you're on your phone or if you're watching TV, or especially watching like a TV show or a movie where it's, I want to say action, lots of movement, that really stimulates everything. And so your body's not winding down for the day, it's actually revving up. And so having kind of a nightly practice where you're getting into a routine is really important, because our bodies really thrive on routine. And so, trying to get to bed around the same time each night. I mean, if there's an hour difference, it's not a huge deal. And then, I don't know if everybody knows this, I hope that you do, but you will now, is every hour of sleep that you get prior to midnight, so before midnight, is worth 2 hours after, because before midnight, your body actually will go into REM sleep more easily. So try to get to bed a little bit earlier. I always challenge my athletes. I'm like, try and get to bed just a half hour earlier this week or an hour earlier this week, whatever you can do. And so really, really important. Now, let's touch quickly on your sleeping environment. We need to make sure that we get rid of all of the lights in our room, right? I would say pretend you're sleeping in a deep, dark cave, right? Blackout blinds, put a towel over top of your alarm clock, especially if it has white or blue lighting. The red is not so disruptful. But remember, our eyelids aren't blackout eyelids, right? When we're out in the sun, you close your eyes, you can still see the sun beaming through. It's the same at night. So if you have a street light outside your window, or if there's outside lights on and you don't have a blind, that's going to disrupt your sleep pattern for sure. And so that, and your temperature. Hard nowadays because of the humidity if you don't have air conditioning, but if you're lucky enough to, then temperature is really important. And just making sure that you're sleeping in an environment that is either quiet, or you might want to have a little bit of white or pink noise. Pink noise is new or new-ish, and they've actually proven that pink noise helps a little bit more than white noise with regards to sleep patterns, just because of the vibrational patterns that it has. It just lets us sleep a little bit deeper. So some things to think about with regards to sleep. And again, sleep is so important. Your body goes through a whole detoxification process when you're sleeping. And so that is super important to make sure you're getting enough sleep. And then mental health. So talking about those negative thoughts, making them positive. So again, I'm going to include a PDF. It's really helpful. And, I always say, talk to yourself like you're talking to your own best friend, because that's the way we should talk to ourselves all the time. And, you know, we all make mistakes. We all learn from them, especially as business owners. We're always trying to adapt, and that's okay. And so be supportive of yourself. And this takes time and practice. And some people are better at it than others. Some people, you know, don't have as much negative self-talk to deal with as others. So everybody's a little bit different. But think about that and just be aware of it. And when those come into your mind, and you'll see them on the sheet, very, very effective. You'll have an instant reaction of how to turn that into a positive reaction for yourself. And I think that is super powerful because our mind and the state of our mind is really important, and so important for our health as well. So very, very powerful things there for you to focus on. So I want to kind of wrap up with regards to our stress response and its effect on the mineral pattern. So we talked a little bit about magnesium, right? And the need for magnesium when you're under stress. And so one of the things that happens with regards to our stress response is our sodium levels. So two of the things that we look at as mineral within hair tissue mineral analysis, and also just in functional medicine in general, the two systems that we look at with regards to the body outside of digestion are the thyroid and the adrenals. Because if they aren't operating properly, there's a lot of other issues that are going to come up in the body. And so with regards to the adrenals, I want to address this one because it's more important with regards to stress. But when we're talking about the adrenal system, the adrenals need sodium in order to function properly. And so one of the ratios that we look at in the testing is our sodium to potassium, because that is our stress ratio. So when our sodium elevates, so when we get chased by the bear, right, we're going to go back to that roller coaster, we're getting chased by the bear, our sodium goes up. Because what the sodium does is it helps the adrenals operate at a higher level. And we need that when we're getting chased by a bear. We have to have that release of adrenaline so that we can run. Now, what happens is when that bear doesn't stop chasing us, when we get into that chronic stress pattern, that sodium that was initially elevated to help the adrenals be almost hyperactive or overactive so that we can run fast is starting to decline. Because again, think about a car on the road. You can only drive a car with so far until it runs out of gas. And that's what happens with the adrenals, because the adrenals are the gas tank, the thyroid is the gas pedal. And so with the adrenals being the gas tank, again, once that sodium starts to come down, you can actually end up in an inverted pattern with regards to sodium to potassium. And that's when you hit burnout. Very simply, you go from an acute stress pattern with high sodium, which affects inflammation. Okay, so excess sodium equals inflammation, equals stress in the body, and then it comes down and you end up in burnout. And we don't want to see anybody get into that position. So we want everyone to be stress resilient. So having some unrefined sea salt, I like Celtic. That's my personal favorite, on your food, or a pinch in your water every day is great to support all of your minerals and is great to support your adrenal system. And so one of the cool things that you can do, so if you're in a stressful situation and you know, and you're getting, let's say you're getting those muscle twitches, then, you know, adding a little bit of magnesium into your day is important, right? To make sure that those are being elevated so that you have enough of that anti-stress hormone. And then the other one is to add in your Celtic sea salt. And important too, because when we are under stress, a lot of times our bodies we may not be drinking enough water, first of all, and we may also not be absorbing the water that we are drinking. So a little pinch of sea salt will actually help to activate the sodium potassium pump that each one of our cells has, and will help the hydration get into the cell and exchange where it actually should be. So supporting health with a pinch of sea salt in every half liter to liter of the water that you're drinking every day is a great addition to your day. Very simple to do, very inexpensive, and is great for the adrenals. And then the other thing that you can do for the adrenals that's very natural, and there's tons of different recipes online, but it's having what we call an adrenal cocktail. So you can do a little bit of OJ, which is high in vitamin C, right? Vitamin C is very important for the adrenal system. A little bit of your sea salt, right? So maybe an eighth of a teaspoon of sea salt. And then you can add in some coconut water, because again, potassium is another one of our anti-stress minerals. And coconut water is really high in potassium. So that's a simple little concoction you can make, you know, maybe a 6-ounce little drink, and you can have that on an empty stomach every day to help support the adrenal system. And especially during stressful times, it's a great addition. So again, I talk all about mineral balance. I am the founder of Vicon Supplements. So the powders that I do actually provide everything that you need based on different mineral patterns, or even just regular support for the body. And it keeps it simple. You need one product. All of the vitamins and minerals and amino acids that you need are in it, and you take it twice a day. So it's super easy to use. So we sell that all over the world. It's a global brand. I'm super proud of that. I have poured beta testing into that with hundreds and hundreds of clients. And I, you know, if somebody is performing at a level where they have the energy to do everything that they need to do every day and everything that they love to do every day, then I've done my job. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got lots out of it. And I hope there's some new tips and tricks. And again, I will provide the link for that document for you to be able to identify those stressors that you can control. And I hope that helps as well.
That was fantastic, Lisa. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I actually have some questions for you.
Absolutely.
As I was listening. Okay, here we go. I have my notebook here. I've been taking notes. So you mentioned diet being a big part of stress and how we manage stress. Which is actually something that's when I notice that I'm stressed. I look at what I'm eating and how often, and I go,
Yeah.
it's a lot of coffee in my diet, not a whole lot of fruits and vegetables.
Yep.
But you also mentioned that sodium in relation to stress, and that your body will, you know, release. You need sodium to help balance that kind of stuff out. Do you find that people with high sodium diets can cause almost like a premature stress? Is that something that affects it, like, or causes a fake stress feel?
It definitely can. So minerals, when we're talking about, you know, functional medicine, it's not just looking at the body, the physical body, but also the mental body. And it's really interesting with regards to sodium, because I've actually personally experienced where my sodium was high, elevated for stress. But when I was supplementing with sea salt, I actually didn't change the amount I was using, and my sodium came down because my stress level came down. But the answer to your question is yes. Your diet can affect the sodium level just as much as your mental state of stress. So it can be affected both ways, both physically and energetically. Absolutely.
Okay, good to know, because that's always the one thing that I see where I go, oh, I'm eating a lot of salty foods and I feel really overwhelmed.
And so an interesting fact to that is if your adrenals are struggling, right? When we're under those stressful situations, your adrenals are struggling. And it's interesting because one of the questions on my intake form is always, are you craving salty or sugary foods? And so if somebody's craving salty foods, I can guarantee it's because their adrenals are struggling. They need sodium, but they don't need sodium from processed foods that come in a box. They need unrefined sea salt. So all the minerals come with it to support it properly.
Right. So 100%. That salt in the water is probably what you should be reaching for rather than McDonald's.
Hands down. You're exactly right. Hands down. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. My next question was, you mentioned foods that are high in potassium, and including things like orange juice and whatnot. What are some foods that people should have in their diets, or what are some of the foods that you recommend people having daily that will help manage the stress or their ability to manage stress? Is there any like superfoods in your mind that really help?
So magnesium and potassium are super important. Magnesium is number one. Doesn't matter what mineral profile someone has with regards to the testing that we do. Normally magnesium is always included just because it's in, you know, there's studies saying it's needed for over 300 enzymatic processes in the body. There's studies that say 600. Now I've seen some that say as much as 800. It is so important. And so Swiss chard is one of my faves. So Swiss chard is high in magnesium and potassium, which is awesome.
Okay.
There's a few other foods that are high in magnesium too. Blackstrap, unsulfured blackstrap molasses is another one. Coconut water water, hands down, is the best bang for your buck with potassium, but watch what brand you choose, because each brand has a bit of a different level of potassium.
Oh,
Okay,
I
so
didn't
very
know that.
important. Yeah,
Okay.
very important.
Yeah.
And then I have two kind of, I don't want to call them superfoods. I want to call them concentrates, because, and I use them pretty much every day. And they're in a base for all of my custom formulas for health practitioners, for their clients, is organic kelp. Kelp is great because another thing that's lacking in our diets today is iodine, sufficient iodine. And so kelp has a little bit of iodine in it. It's a nutrient-dense food. It contains tons of minerals, and it is just a great multi-nutrient mineral support that is supernatural and that you can use every day. And so kelp is great. And the other one that I like is marine phytoplankton. So very similar, similar qualities to kelp, just a little bit more nutrient dense. It's actually one of the most nutrient dense foods on the entire planet. So I definitely like to include those in my daily regime.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's helpful. It's just because it's such a simple part, I think, of our day-to-day lives, eating. I mean, we all should be doing it. So, but it's something that I think can affect so much more. And like you've mentioned, it just makes a big difference. And so it's important to know, what kind of changes should you be making and what can you add into your day-to-days just to help balance things, especially now, right? Everybody's kind of running on empty, but we're also trying to fill our cups while balancing a bunch of different things on our plate.
Yeah.
It's a little overwhelming. Yeah.
And we can't overlook water. Hydration, I guarantee at least half the people or more that are going to see this will say, I don't drink enough water. And then they'll think about it and they'll go, I didn't drink hardly any water yesterday. It's the first thing we seem to, because we're so focused on so many things. And then, we kind of get into the diet, the exercise and all that, and we forget about hydration. And that has to be hands down, minimum. I go with 1 ounce per kilogram of body weight. So in order to do that calculation, if people aren't familiar, every pound is 2.2 pounds per 1 kilo. So take your weight in pounds divided by 2.2, and that's how many ounces of water you should be drinking each day. And so it usually comes in around 2 liters. And I don't think a lot of people get to that point each day.
No. Definitely not in water, maybe coffee or other drinks, but not just pure water.
And coffee's dehydrating.
Yeah.
So for every cup of coffee, you have to have a cup of water to get back to where you started.
And that's a lot.
That is a lot.
For somebody who drinks a lot of coffee. What are your tips or that you recommend for people who are trying to get into the habit of drinking water? I find that when you go from drinking juices or coffee, it's hard to get into that habit.
Yeah. So, there's a couple of different things. You know what? I found for myself, and this sounds so silly, but I tell this to clients all the time and they always come back and say, that totally worked. And so for some reason, people need convenience, even if it's to drink their water. So I personally have a mug, like a stainless steel mug, and it has a straw. And so it has I use a stainless steel straw. Yeah. And so I drink more water if I use that cup that has a straw in it than if I was to drink out of anything else. And so that's my thing. It's find what you love to, you're going to drink more if you find something that's easy, that you like to, it's just easy for you. Right? Yeah. I find that you drink more. And the other little trick I have is I always make sure whenever I buy a mug like that, is I make sure that it's at least 750 milliliters, because then I know I only have to have really 2 and maybe a little more. And I drink my vitamins every morning because I make powders, right? So they have water in them. So chances are I'm getting enough by drinking my 2 vitamins in my 2 cups of that big cup, then I've done my day. So super easy to be able to have 2 cups instead of, 10 to 12.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned straws, because I don't know what it is, but straws make the drinking of water so much easier. I don't know why.
I don't know either, but it was funny because my husband always said, probably 5 years ago, I stopped buying water bottles because I finally figured all this out. He's like, you buy a water bottle every month. It's because I'm trying to find one that's going to make me drink more water.
Yeah. And then you end up with a cupboard full of them and you go, okay, now you have to drink water out of all of them.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's too funny. Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you for joining us today. And if anybody watching has questions or wants to get in touch with Lisa, we're going to leave all of her contact information in the comments if you're watching this in the future or watching the recording. She's more than happy to answer any questions that you have. She's got a wealth of knowledge for you on this kind of stuff. So really take advantage of it if you can. And her free PDFs that she's got to even just track and take a look at your stress levels is amazing. So make sure you check that out. And thank you, Lisa, so much for taking the time today. It was so informative.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Well, have a great rest of your day. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.